will say that I grew up hungry. It was minus 59 degrees. My outer shell on my right hand flew off.
From the Sub-Zero training, you thought after that, how can I go on with military career? I go to acting.
I had a conversation with Arthur Spencer, and he's talking to me. The likelihood of you getting out from that is very slim. Going or not going, we were always going.
One hour away from Stuttgart, so I'm not that far away.
Well, having been born there, I don't remember it. I mean, I remember sitting on the stoop, and I think in our first conversation, I was trying to remember her name was Inga.
Oh, okay.
and she was a bit of a nanny, helping my mom out. My mother had two little girls, twins, that were 3 years old, and I was born. And then quickly, it wasn't long, a year after I was born, a brother was born. We were all born on army bases.
Okay.
And that's kind of, I'm sure that's had it, it has had an influence in my life. It started out with saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir.
It has the pluses and the minuses. Like, you don't know.
It wasn't like, I want that. And, I don't. There was respect. And my father did well. He had purpose, but he died young. And he was an officer in the army. He was a captain. He was a general's aide. He'd gone to a military academy in high school. So he was lined up to do this. But I think Korea beat the heck out of him. And he was 13 months in active duty combat. And literally going out the door, the Jeep that he was in was hit. And his driver was killed. And the combination, that's just like the icing on the cake. I think it really disturbed me. But my father passed on when I was 11. And we had just moved to Vermont. And I'm from there. 5 other brothers and sisters. I told you about the twins. Brother born on my first birthday, and then another set of twins. My mother was truly a remarkable individual. But because she loved my dad, and she never remarried, and so we all had to figure it out. And I'll tell you, Paul, that's how I started learning and adapting. And she told me clearly, I think you can do this. And I would just believe her and take it on. And she would say, now, I can't talk to your brother Kim that way. Well, I would say, well, why can't he mow the lawn? And she said, because you can. I said, well, he's going to mow it this time. And we lived in the country, and there was an area that we wanted to kind of set up, not with a lawn, but we had to cut it down. So the lawnmower was set on high. And there was high grasses, almost like a field. And my brother goes out there, and this is many years ago. This is in the 60s, 1960s. And so he mows a great, big, huge peace sign in this field. And that is so Kim, my brother Kim. And he said, what's wrong? I said, Kim, you got to go back and forth. I mean, you're creating art. Yeah, okay, that's cool, but let me do it. So it was learning that as individuals, and it's a good lesson because we are 6 different kids, and an older sister that was just amazing at doing things, and she helped take care of us. Literally the oldest by minutes because she was a twin. But she did so much to help my mom because that was in her nature. And I was able as a guy. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Isn't it crazy that back in those days, as a single mother, you were able to raise 6 kids? And today I don't think it's possible anymore.
Well, money didn't exist. And I will say that I grew up hungry. I
Mm-hmm.
would go to people's homes, and it was very rural. I said, my school had 5 towns feeding it. And the high school and junior high school had the 5 towns coming in. And my graduating class was 31 people. And it's very rural. And during those times, my mother said at one point she could feed the family for a week on $10.
Wow.
Is that
Unbelievable.
wild?
Wow,
That
absolutely.
that's when bread was 10 cents a loaf.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been white bread, but she made bread. I mean, we did a lot of our own cooking, and there was a
I
bit
mean,
of a
that's the
garden.
yeah, that's the way in which you survive like that. Like you having the reason why I'm asking is I'm living in Germany, and I think the thing which I see quite often, Germany is a social state, and I think you can
Hmm.
call it a social state because the amount of help that you get from the government when you are
Hmm.
in hard situation is really insane, and people are not aware of this. People living in Germany, they are not aware of this. They are complaining that they're not getting that and that, but the amount of help that they get from the government, they get
Is it
rent paid.
extensive? It's a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
So
that's amazing.
I'm just giving you the example. If you are a family and none of the parents have an income, they have the possibility to request help from the government, which is called Hartz IV. I think now in the meantime they changed the name. It's called Citizens Money or something like this.
Hmm.
And you get your rent paid, you get your power, water, TV, phones, and stuff like this paid, covered by the government. And
The
besides that, you have
fundamentals. Wow.
absolutely. And besides that,
Powerful.
you get an income from the government, depending on your social situation and your amount of members in your family and so on, which can be up to 1,000, 1,500 euros only for food. And that's why
Hmm.
that makes it quite hard for the people to get the incentive to go back to work, because if they would go back to
Yeah.
work, they would have to
Yes.
pay everything by themselves. And there are a lot of cases in which people are 30 years for 30 years long in that help from the state because they are not incentivized to do anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah, different
Hmm.
times. We went directly into discussion, Ted. Then I told you in the pre discussion that we had that I think you're a fantastic human being because the amount of events that you had in your life are amazing. And now telling me that you're
Hmm.
coming from a six kids household which grew up without a father, that makes it even more challenging and
Hmm.
um, um, even more impressive.
Oh, great.
Today, I get to introduce you to my audience, which makes me happy. A thing which I'm happy about. Um, I would say, like this: you jumped out of an airplane over the South Pole. You thought survival in Antarctica.
Hmm.
Then you walked into an acting school in New York. So, uh, well, Jones, or as some may know you, Ted Jones. I
Yes.
think you lived several lives until now. Like really several lives. um,
Do we get 7? Is that what they say?
I think you have more. I think you have more. I would like to
I hope I
start
have
by
more.
asking. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I can tell you for sure you have more. I want to start by asking you, where are you today located, and how does life look like for you?
Well, I'm
How
in
does
Santa Fe.
a day in your life? Sorry, a day in your
Oh,
life looks like for
I
you.
see specifically. Well, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Been here since '09. Um, I have a daughter here, the youngest of my children here, and we see each other. My days start at 4:30 in the morning, and I've adjusted my schedule a little bit because by 6 o'clock I either want to be on a mountain or in water. But I practice Wim Hof, the breathing method, and I do cold plunges as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I have readings that I do. It's a book or something that's feeding whatever it is I'm involved in. And right now I'm involved with a new business. And so I'm reading It's really a wellness book. It's called The Magic Shop, and it's by a neurosurgeon that has passed on. He just passed on, but his name is James R. Doty, and this is his story. And it's interesting because he had a very rough childhood, and in many ways, I could say, yeah, I had a rough childhood, but it's I learned a lot. So I do that 6 o'clock. I'm usually out the door going to a trailhead and I do a scramble up a mountain and it's before the sunrise. A little bit, I get up there just after right now and get back. And I've been doing podcasts in the morning or meeting, doing an initial chat like we had and meeting a new podcaster. Working, for the first time, I'm actually involved in social. I'm involved with LinkedIn. So now I'm building connections. I, and they're coming in. I mean, just clicking connect, and I've been able to. And I know some of these people, and some have asked to connect with me, a long time ago. But
Hmm.
I'm doing that, and my milk money is that I restore. I have a client that owns a very gorgeous home, and they're elderly. Uh, he's 95, she's 93, and I take care of their house. They have full care in their house, but we are getting that house ready for a potential sale if when one of them passes on. And but I'm very close to them, and my skill set is I have been a carpenter and I've been a painter. Uh, that started with the first time at 11 years old. My father passed on. Yeah. And my mother said, we need a door on the side of the barn. And she said, I think you can do it. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she turned around. She handed over a coffee can, a tin, U-Ban coffee tin. And she said, now you straighten these nails. And after you're through using them, we'll see about getting more. I said, yes. I said, yes, ma'am. Turned around. I was going, oh, what did I do? What? I don't know anything, you know? But she
And for the
wants me to
kids,
build.
and for the kids watching these days, there's no
Mhm.
YouTube where you can search how to build a barn door.
Oh, no. No, 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 no. I mean, this is moi. I took the nails. I mean, I started with like, what is this? Someone said this is like a horseshoe nail. I didn't know. And it was bent. You know how hard it is to straighten a horseshoe nail? You basically can't, you know. But I was pounding it into wood and I said, this is a disaster. I realized you got to get a stone and you got to do it on a stone. That's as far as I got. I straightened all the nails. I did build the door. I went around the area and looked at different doors and figured out it has to have a cross pieces. And I think the door, it wasn't the wood that made it weighty. It was all the nails I put into it because I didn't want it to fall apart. I wanted to make sure, and it took 3 guys to hang it because it was so heavy.
So
But I did
heavy.
it. But you see, it was someone that looked at me, my mom, someone important, and said, I'd like you to do this. And there's been a moment where it's like, okay. And I'm hearing it, and I just started getting excited, really, ultimately. And that's been all the way up to Miles pulling me in on the new project that his brainstorm that he came up with, and this whole team that is actually being coming back together, but being pulled in again, and another learning curve is what I'm talking about. Another way to apply what has happened before, but to learn something new. And so my day is filled with like I'm involved in trying to get an understanding of Chat GPT-5. I, and an understanding without hating it, or without having an opinion about it, without saying this is going to destroy the world, like all my friends
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
They say, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose this. And to me, I'm saying, I have 1,000 interns at my disposal. this is unbelievable. If I need
Yes.
information, I'm getting information. Now, how I'm using it, you know, I'm not going to abuse it. And I'm using it with our company uh, for the good of humanity. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not an app, it's not a game, it's not trying to do something quicker, faster. It's taking, we call it soul tech. So this is what I'm involved with daily. So soul tech, it's taking humanity and bringing technology together. And the company is called Reflecta dot AI, with a K, REFLEKTA dot AI. And it's at this moment, it's about connecting the past on, people that have passed on, with the present. And the technology is set up in our system to upload the shoebox of pictures that have been in the attic for years about a loved one, an elder, husband, wife, mom, dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle, someone in the family, high security protection. You're the editor. You can share it with the family, and it's for the family or
Mm-hmm.
anyone you want. And you sit down, there's a picture of the individual, there's a voice, you've uploaded their voice.
Oh, a voice as well.
Paul, that's the most amazing thing. Yeah. So this new company is allowing people, and you can go onto the site and have a conversation. Miles has been a longtime friend for 35 years. He's the one that I have done several. We've done several adventures with purpose that we'll talk about in our conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
this is another one, adventure, that is going into technology, and it is. Well, he called me and he told me about he was working on it. And he said, hey, Wells, would you like to talk with Art? Art is his
Mm-hmm.
dad. I said, Miles, he passed on 7 years ago. 8 years? When did he pass on? What are you talking about? He said, I'm going to send you a link. And he sent me the link. And I had a conversation with Arthur Spencer. And he's talking to me, Wells. He knew me as Tad back then,
Wow.
as Tad. And the first thing I asked him was, "Is Art?" I said, "Art, it's so great to see you, to hear you. How are you?" I'm going, "Whoa!" I'm asking him how he is. He's passed on, you know. But his voice, I mean, it was him. Do you see?
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Tad, I'm doing just fine. How are you today?" And so I said, Art, remember when Miles made the rosemary chicken, the dinner we had before we left for the Middle East on that 1,100-mile journey? He said, oh, do I ever? He said, I sat there listening to the two of you, and he just goes into it. How does he know this? Because the family has uploaded stories, and then and Miles has talked about it and has been asked the same questions before, and he comes back, and you have a nuanced, it's an emotional experience.
Crazy. I always thought about that something like an online obituary will be a good idea, but it exists a few and they don't have the
Mhm.
success. But this one is gonna be really interesting because this is the closest neighbor to taking your conscience and moving into a cloud before you passed on.
It is your legacy, and
Absolutely.
the Wall Street Journal, I guess it was just 2 weeks ago, 10 days, 2 weeks ago, did an article on grandparents, on seniors, and people with wealth, high network value individuals, and the money they're spending on private memoirs, hiring ghostwriters. They're spending $100,000 to have their story so that their family understands that where they are today and all the success
It's
didn't
because of
just
them.
happen. And so it's like it's giving stories and articles and just many, many things that the family at their, when they're ready, can tune in.
I don't want to go into the into the political discussion, but I'm pretty sure that if we would have had this earlier, we
Mhm.
wouldn't have had the migration discussion that we have now in a
Oh
lot
my
of
goodness.
countries,
Yeah.
because everyone would be aware that every part of us comes from a certain type of migration, of moving things left and right, of
Of
even though in the
course.
same country, it doesn't have to be across borders, but you can
Hmm.
be inside the borders. And but I think
Absolutely.
it's impressive.
Thank you.
That
Thank you. So that's my day, and I literally try to, I'm not in a relationship right now. I have been. And for the last 8 months, no. And it's been full focus on doing podcasts. I'm over 50 hours of talking with podcasters like yourself all over the world. And it's like making friends. It
yeah,
is. And it's
it's so
entering at a
nice.
level where we're talking about something that's of value. And it's not just, hey, do
Yeah,
you,
that's why that I told you. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I think I'm able to speak with people that I would not have had the chance to speak in any other
sure,
situation.
sure.
Um, let's go back a bit because we kind of went into the topic, into the discussions close,
Hmm.
because you are doing amazing things. But I would like to go a bit at the beginning and ask you, how did you end up in Antarctica with the Navy?
It was a choice. I mean, it was a choice to join the Navy. And it
Okay.
was a means, instead of going in 1973, instead of going off to school, which I had no desire to hang out in Vermont or go to a college, or I needed to get away. At 15, I'd been away for the first time on my own with an organization that was called Encampment for Citizenship. So I had a sense, by going away for the summer, taking a bus ride from New York City to Great Falls, Montana, with people from all over the world, different cultures, all kinds of personalities, and they were all in high school. I was probably the youngest because I was 15. Most of them were 17, 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so my eyes were opened up. I mean, I had met the mayor of Tel Aviv's son was a part of this group. But it was from that level to, there were people from Spanish Harlem, Long Island. There were rich, poor, but they were selected by someone in their school because of their thinking. They were thought
Mm-hmm.
leaders, do you know? So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't economic stuff. And so I had a sense of that. And I came home and I told my mother that I wanted to run away after school started. I'd come back from that camp. This is leading up to the answer to your story. Um, and she said, what are you talking about? I said, I can't stay here. I have friends now and they don't live here. It was like that didn't hold an ounce of water. She said, if you can't handle where you are right now, you have no business putting one foot forward. Do not run away. Stop commenting and see the good all around you. Engage. You'll be led what to do next. Got through high school, graduated, but before that, it was like, are you going to go to school? Am I going to go to school? What am I going to do? My mother said, why don't you go into the Navy? Really? The Navy? She said, I can see it. There's a lot of different programs, but you'll get the GI Bill afterwards. You will have made some money. You can go to school and then go back as an officer. Go to OCS, military. It was in the
Mm-hmm.
family. And I said, I I looked into it, and it was like in February before I graduated in June, and I talked to a recruiter. Of course, afterwards, hindsight, yeah, they gave me all the glory things that were possible that didn't happen, you know. And but I went in and I realized it doesn't matter what I end up doing. What matters is to get out of here and to be put into a new, it's an adventure. I have no idea what it's going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
but it had all the qualities of what adventure is. It was a commitment. It was great. And it just happened that when I got my orders after going through A school, which is where you earn your rate, you have to select the actual job you're going to do. Well, I was going to work in the commanding officer's office in his administration as a yeoman. And when I got the orders, even the guys that taught the class that were handing out the orders, they were telling the orders, da, 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 and they came up to Jones. Good God. And one guy shows the other guy, and they look at each other, and I'm watching like, what are they talking? What's up? What's wrong? What's good? What's going on? And they just turned it upside down on the table, and then picked the next one up and said Diaz, blah blah blah. And I was the last one. They picked it back up, and they said Jones. I don't know. You either lucked out or you didn't. We think you lucked out. You're going to be going to Christchurch, New Zealand, working for the National Science Foundation, flying planes around Antarctica. My mind, as I'm hearing this, and that's exactly what they said, like, New Zealand? And they said Christchurch, New Zealand is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And they're one of the few places they actually like us right now. And so I did. And I checked into the station. I was out of Point Mugu is where we were in the United States. Point Mugu is, again, it was a beautiful place. It's just north of Malibu in
Mm-hmm.
California. It's a very, very beautiful. It's right on the coast. And I was at the Enlisted Men's Club having a 2% beer. Paul, when you're 18 years old, at the Enlisted Men's Club, it was 2% beer. Can you imagine what that tastes like? It was water. Anyway, a guy was sitting across from me. He said, hey, I was like, yeah, you're new. I said, yes, I am. And he said, all right, okay, what's your name? Bah. I told him. I said, what's that on your chest? He said, parachute wings. Parachute wings. For what? I'm a member of the Antarctic parachuting rescue team. You interested? I was like, it was like, I didn't say, I said, yes. I didn't say, are you kidding? I just said, yeah. 6 months later, I had to apply, and I did, and I went through the training. And the first time I was on the ice, Antarctica, it was the 74-75 season. I stepped off as a member of the Antarctic pararescue team, and it was incredible. I learned medical treatment. Most of all, I learned how to free fall, skydive. We were a precision skydiving group because we'd have to jump above glaciers in different areas of parts of the polar plateau and around Antarctica and land on the spot. We weren't doing low altitude military jumps. We were jumping with civilian equipment, and it was incredible. And the training and the learning about capacity, learning skills. It wasn't about the military. The discipline and the requirements required complete focus. And I loved it. Loved it.
But how was take me through a mission? So you were jumping, like you said, you're jumping on a fixed spot, and then how were you coming out of there?
Well, we never jumped in. We ended up landing. But if we had to jump in, we would land on the spot, and then there are means of creating a runway or coming in
Okay.
with JADO and different things. The mishaps were happening, or the plane, we call them mishaps. To say a plane crash leads one to think of something just devastating. They're mishaps. most of them happened on takeoff, where the sastrugi in the field and where they decided to land, and there's a choice of where you land. But there's a formation called sastrugi, which is in the Arctic and the Antarctic, where the wind creates these waves of snow, hard patch snow, and you plow through that stuff in order to get in the air or to land. And in doing that, sometimes the planes tip, wing, tips, different things can happen. The nose skis, the skis on the plane, something can happen, brackets break. Since the beginning of this squadron flying planes in Antarctica, I think it was in 1957 when they started, it was averaging 1 point something planes per year that had. And so way back, the pararescue team, I don't really recall the year that it actually started, but in the late 60s, early mid 60s.
How do you think that was the as a? Let me rephrase the question. Uh, what do you think that tested you the most as a first job? Was it the weather? Was it the rescue condition? Was it the general condition? Was it the military? What do you think that tested you and got you strength?
The weather was always number one, which includes the wind. Now we're not dealing with darkness because while we're there,
Mm-hmm.
the sun is up.
Yeah.
So it's weather and its location. Much of what we did was training, constantly training, walking
Mm-hmm.
across crevasse fields, roped up. You walk the first time roped up, and when someone disappears in front of you, you belay them because they've fallen into a crevasse. We don't want to fall in crevasses, but we
Mm-hmm.
learn to fall in crevasses to protect each other, but more importantly, how to get people out. So there are rescues like that, local stuff, helping people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
out of situations, sprained ankles, wrists, that sort of thing.
How do
It
you
was
feel
all
the
so
weather?
exciting. It was all so exciting. I mean, to jump out of a C-130 and jump the tail ramp is like this, a plane's going this way. The tail ramp is like this and the plane's there. And when that tail ramp opens, that space between, my head where I'm showing you now is like a movie screen. And it's open to the air, the earth, and we're flying at 125 miles an hour and jumping into that and learning how to do that and control yours. First, we do it with control. Then we play around and we do whatever we want to do because we know how to find stability. But it was just exhilarating. It's the first time that I realized I really have my life in my hands. It's in my control. And to be responsible for that, I had to know what to do if this happens or that happens or that happens, or what you do when you get on the ground if that happens, if that happens. And my mind and I just loved the simplicity of that and the
Mm-hmm.
complete focus of that.
But the weather was the known one. That the thing which was clear was always the same. Was always, like you said, always cold. Um, was there an unknown part which
Yeah,
was always different?
we didn't have weather reports like we have now. We didn't know
Oh.
that a whiteout. Everybody complains, well, they say it's going to be sunny today and it's not, it's raining. You go, oh, yeah, that's too bad, big deal. In our situation, when you see on one side of the glacier and you're climbing up and you're just, or behind you, you see that there's sunshine. It's beautiful. It's blue sky. And you get to the top and suddenly you're in trouble. There's a whiteout that's just coming at you. And 60-mile-an-hour winds that you didn't have going up. And it's
So
not knowing these things
so
and being
basically,
prepared to handle it.
you knew it's gonna be cold, but you didn't know anything else.
Well, you prepare for the cold and you make sure that you don't overheat because it's zero humidity there. So
Oh.
the moisture that you get is from perspiration. And so there's
Mm.
constantly dealing with layers. We didn't have, we had ripstop nylon, silk, and wool. We didn't have Gore-Tex. We didn't have lightweight, you know, uh, wind and rain, water, impermeable clothing. No, we didn't have that. But we weren't worried about rain and the snow. The snow really, it doesn't just snow like you think of Christmas time and the snow is pretty and it lands and it collects. No, it blows in. And so whenever there's snow, there's wind. And the wind can be just, I mean, when we jumped out of the plane on February 19th, January 19th, 1977, it was minus 59 degrees. Minus 59 degrees. Now that
Celsius.
we were jumping into an airstream of 125 miles per hour. It wasn't that temperature on the ground, and we had a free fall, but it was still jumping into that. My outer shell on my right hand flew off. It wasn't tied in. It was just I don't, I don't know how I missed it. I had plastic over my hands, and I had a German Dachstein wool glove, a mitt that had just a thumb and, and it was thick. It's like 3/8 of an inch thick. And so I felt my hand freeze and thaw within 60 seconds. Just the cold, the snap. But it didn't, I was free falling. It flew off. I knew it was off. I checked to make sure I could get my thumb underneath my ripcord. Back then, ripcords were in front, not behind. In the front, and you pull a cord out of its housing, and then a pilot chute comes out that pulls everything out, and then you have a canopy. And so, yeah, cold, very cold. Being stuck in a tent, testing equipment on the polar plateau, and being stuck for 2 days in and out of whiteouts. And no one could come in and pull us out of there because we were in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere. It was the helicopters that were going to do that. Actually, we weren't on the polar plateau. We were on the Farrar Glacier. It was a different place. But we'd been on the polar plateau. Our equipment, as I was saying, we didn't have Gore-Tex or, Pack Light. None of this stuff. Think Edmund Hillary. you know, think everybody had beards. I couldn't grow a beard, but beards, and it was just layers down and triple layer boots, and things were the new plastic boots. Dolomite was just coming in with mountaineering boots that had an outer plastic shell, and then you had at least one layer, maybe two, of to put your feet in, to that we were wearing. You know, so and
Crazy.
our equipment came from a new company called MSR, which is Mountain Safety Research. Maybe you or your listeners would know what that is. It's a big company. It's still alive. North Face had just started making some things. And so we were getting, we put it out there that we're the rescue team in Antarctica will test your equipment, at the South Pole or in different areas of Antarctica, and people just lit up. So we got these wonderful boxes of tents and sleeping bags and stoves, different new equipment to test. And so that's what we supplied the aircraft with on board the aircraft, so that if there was a mishap, that there were things on board that would be used, as well as the aircraft itself, in protecting yourself from the elements
Mm-hmm.
and setting up triage as needed.
For how long were you there?
Basically, the earliest I went in, when I was there on October 7th
Mm-hmm.
of 1977. '76, and I left February just before Valentine's Day, February
Mm-hmm.
12th, something like that. So that's October, November, December, January, February. It was 4 months, basically. By the time when I came in, it's called winter fly-in. There were two planes that landed. I was on the second plane. One landed before us, and we were bringing in mail and fresh vegetables for the people that wintered over. And they'd been 8 months there, in darkness and with no mail. Today, GPS, communications. If I wanted to talk with my family in Vermont, I'd have to put my name on a list. Outside the ham shack was the ham radio, and with a big tower. And there was a guy on a ham radio that was saying, "This is so and so," and it was a southern guy, you know, trying to connect with anyone near Vermont, USA. And they would patch in from North Carolina or California and then call from there to my home so I could say hello to my mom, let her know I was okay. And you would say, "Hi, Mom, over." And then you hear her say, and she go, "Oh, Tad, it's so nice to hear you. How are you? How are you, honey?" "Mom, you got to say over, over." you know, and I mean, guys were finding out that their baby was born, that things, so many things were happening at home, and it was all through this very, you know, um, antique process of communication. Nothing like what we have now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you came back from Antarctica, and then from the sub-zero training, you thought after that, how can I go on with this, my military career? I go to acting.
Well, I wanted to be a smoke jumper, but that was reasoned through. My climbing partner, Paul, and I said, we'll be smoke jumpers in the Pacific Northwest. Fight fires, jump in, fight fires. We just thought, yeah. And I looked into it, and you had to have 2 years on the ground. Paul had 6 more months in the Navy before he would be available. And I
Mm-hmm.
just said, I'm going to look at something else, Paul. Good luck. I'm onto something else. I went shrimping with my brother in the Gulf of Mexico. And it was a wild ride because there was a hurricane where all the shrimp boats in the Gulf out of Freeport, Texas, hit the town. It was the gnarliest group of men I'd ever been around. They were all packing knives, tequila, and a wallet full of cash because they've unloaded their shrimp, you know, and everything's done in cash, and everybody's protecting their cash, and everybody's getting really high on tequila as well. And there were some things that happened where I just realized I needed to get out of there. It was my brother Kim, who was a rig man on a boat. He said, "Come on down. I haven't seen you in a while. Come on down. Let me show you around, and maybe you'll get into this." It wasn't my thing. So I was in Texas. I was on the phone with my mother, and I said, I want to live in Santa Barbara, and I'm thinking about going to school, but I don't know for sure. I know I want English or humanities. And she said, "Why don't you take acting?" I said, "Really?" She said, "Well, you were wonderful in that play." I said, "Mother, I didn't have any lines." Really? I
Yeah, but
said,
you're the best. You're the best. So
she said, "No, your presence, you're just naturally." "Well, you did." She said, "You did that community show. You had some lines in that one. But what I'm talking about," I said, "I know the Shakespearean one." She said, "You like to do research. I just see that if you really want to get a sense of the world and the way your imagination works, do Shakespeare. Be a king. Be a prince. Be a good guy, a bad guy. It allows you the opportunity to explore all these things. And then you could be a dentist." I said, "What?" A
But the
dentist?
but the range of those two.
She said, she, she said, well, look at Dr. Black. And I remember my dentist, Dr. Black, he was in the show that I was in that I did have lines. And she said, he's a dentist, he makes money, and he's an actor. I said, I don't know, Mom, about dentists, but I like the idea of, English is a major in theater, whatever. So I did. And I loved it. And once I realized I wasn't going to go to LA, um, because I wanted to know more about the craft, I went to New York City, to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I applied, I got in. And the president said, when he was placing me in class, he said, I ended up doing theater actually in Santa Barbara. I was doing uh, repertory theater in the summertime. Once I got into acting and I really liked it and I was raw. But I was seen, and a director took me under his wing and he put me in some big shows as the lead. And it was just very exciting to the point where I got press in Santa Barbara. And when my mother was visiting, we were in the grocery store. Three people came up and said, Oh, oh, Tad, I just want to say I saw your show. My mother's standing there and she just beamed, you know. It was so wonderful. It's really nice to see you. It was like,
Then
okay,
she was able to say, "I told you so. I
there you
told
go.
you you were good at." Yeah.
Well, I went to New York I went to the academy and I had a very rough time at the academy. I had an instructor and I would do a scene and would look at me and she would just sit there and stare at me. And the point was after you do a scene, the instructor would tell you, and she did it with everybody. And she just looked at me and she said, no. I said, no. What do you mean? Well, how did you feel? I said, well, well, what's yes? What if it's no? What's yes? And she said, you've got to stop thinking too much. You've got it all planned out what you're going to do. You're not in the moment. And I'm starting to remember my mother. You're not in the moment. You're not living and not accepting where you are. It's you. We want to see you in the circumstances. We don't want to see you playing someone else in the circumstance. We want to see you. What would you do under these circumstances? Okay, so it's Shakespeare, and you're giving a speech to get the men to fight. What if it was you? And it just finally hit me. And I found that spot where what she was talking about. And then I just fell in love with acting. I mean, I really got it. And when I got out, um, I didn't get an agent like other people in my class did. And I was very concerned because the little scene that I did for agents was just a mess. And I don't know why, but it just was a mess. But the director of that scene that I'd never worked with before, and I thought she was nutty, called me and she said, I have a friend, director, that's in New York trying to cast a show, his St. Louis show of tribute. And he's got uh, Ken Howard is playing the lead. And they're looking for someone to play his son. He's going to be here for 3 days. He's been here for 2. He has not found anyone. I think you're really right for it. She said, do you know who I mean? I said, sure. Opie. And Opie was Ron Howard, not Ken Howard. Ken Howard was 6'9". He ended up being the SAG president in our country, for a number of years. But I mean, that was a faux pas. She screamed, said, no. Anyway, I really had to weasel my way, even though she set it up, because I wasn't equity. I wasn't a professional. And when you go to these calls, they're very protective. They don't let anyone in unless they have an appointment. And then I had to explain that I got this through this woman that knows the director. And I ended up getting the part. And so I it was like a blessing. and the reviews in St. Louis were incredible. And it was about the father-son relationship, and it was just one of those things that worked. And I came back to New York and I got an agent, a commercial agent, but they also sent me out for other things. And they told me, we're going to send you out on commercials and you're very white bread. I said, white bread? What's that mean? I mean, come on. That sounds awful. Well, you're tall, you're blonde, you're blue, and you're white.
Back then, you were allowed to say it.
Yes, but I was going like, whoa, And so anyway, they said I was really into acting, and it fit. And they said it will take between 20 auditions or more, and by the time you do about 40 between callbacks, maybe you'll get a commercial. So don't have your hopes up high about this, but we think you might be good at this. Well, I booked my fourth commercial, and it was for Kodak. And it just went on from there, and it allowed me to do theater until I couldn't do theater and support my family because I wasn't making money. I was making money as commercials, but that was changing. And so there was another shift, but I had a wonderful run off Broadway with the repertory company and acting with people that were Academy Award winners,
But you're not making money from acting, like not non-commercial one.
No,
Really?
the commercials I would, but it would be
Yeah,
enough.
of course, the commercials, yeah.
And I did. I always had a beer commercial running. I did Molson's beer, and I loved doing it. I played a Dutch skier. You know, it was so much fun. I mean, it was so much fun.
I
And
don't want to make the joke. I have to tell you a joke afterwards.
Tell me, you want to tell a joke? Maybe it's time for a joke.
There is there was a story. I don't know if you know, in Europe there were some contests which were called surviving. No, I'm famous. Get me out of here. I don't know if you had it in the US as well,
No,
but
I don't
they
know
had
of
it
it.
as a chain. So they took some famous people, took them in the jungle. But the story is about the two guys presenting this, because
Yes.
they had them happening in South Africa, and the presenters are two actors. So I'm talking about the Romanian show now. Are two actors from Romania. One is a white, fat, 160 tall guy, 160, 165, and the other one is a darken color because he has some African heritage, even though he's born in Romania. His father was from one of the African countries. I don't remember them anymore, and he's like 2 meters tall, and so on. And every time when they were in South Africa, everyone was talking respectful with the fat guy who was small, and they were disrespecting him. And he said, "Why is this happening?" He said, "He looks like the Dutch guys that came to own us a few decades ago."
See? Well, yeah, that's so
I'm
funny.
sorry for this.
No, but it's the thinking, and that we don't. Maybe it's just not as prevalent now, for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Politically incorrect was one phrase, but no, I learned it very quick about by being in the service and being with different cultures. What I loved was, and I didn't know anything about, was Native Americans. And there was a guy that was a Cherokee, and this guy was, I mean, he was an Indian. All he needed was a great big headdress with all the feathers, and he'd be the chief. And he played that up, but he was serious as well, very serious. But seeing the different people, but for acting, they slot you. You are slotted in a spot. And at the time, I was white bread, but that was a good thing. To me, it sounded disgusting. It sounded disgusting to me. But it wasn't because I was white bread that I got the amount of work that I did. It's because of what I did. It's what I learned with Janice Powell when she said no. And she was ready to challenge me. She goes, "No, I don't believe that scene." I didn't believe you. Well, what's yes? When you stop thinking so much and planning all these cute little moves and doing this and just be yourself. I mean, the actors that we really love to watch are those that play themselves. And we see them, they're just so, we want to see it because so and so's in it, because they're going to do their twist on that character.
Absolutely.
So,
What was how long was your acting career
well,
lasting?
it was from 1980 to, I would say 1995. It was 15 years.
A good run. I
And
would say a good run.
it was a good run. And the choice was take the lessons learned from acting and put it in. I mean, it had to do with being asked to direct a show.
Mm-hmm.
And the show was a show that was going to be at Lincoln Center in Avery Fisher Hall. So that it was big, high profile, and the people involved. Now, I was asked because the director that had been directing the show, it's an annual show, jazz show. The man that had been directing it, I had worked with. And
Mm-hmm.
we knew these people that created the show and had seen the show. And they knew that I knew the director, and they wanted to know my thought in particular, and my wife as well, but my thought about the director and the show. And and it was very clear that there seemed to be a level missing. He did so much with the show, but there was a spirituality and a connection that wasn't in the show, and I just saw things. And they said, "Would you direct it?" And the shows he did, were not at Lincoln Center. They were in small places, smaller, not as prestigious. And so my wife and I took it on. And after we did the show, and it was wonderful success. And we had leading jazz people from Dave Brubeck, Stanley Turrentine, Paquito de Rivera, Tito Puente, Candido, the conga master, many people that were playing with Dizzy Gillespie. There were the protege of Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, people that were connected in jazz to the greats. Lionel Hampton was in the show. And so um, it was wonderful. And it's very different directing jazz musicians than it is directing actors. But I've been around a lot of productions, mostly live theater stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought, hey, why don't we start a production company? And so we came up with a name. We called it Aunahil, Aunahil. And the same people that created the Jazz Nativity knew an organization in Washington, D.C. that wanted to do a show at the Kennedy Center. And they were looking for director producers to do that. And we were tapped to do that. And the show host was James Earl Jones. Dionne
Wow.
Warwick. Dionne Warwick sang That's What Friends Are For. It was loaded. I mean, we put it together with our client,
Mm-hmm.
and it was such a success. And we ended up just doing productions for that client in Washington, D.C., to the point that I was asked to be the chief operating officer of that foundation. And so it went from, Antarctic pararescue to acting to production work, then to running a high profile foundation in Washington, D.C., which meant moving from New York to
Mm-hmm.
D.C. And so these were all taps, Paul, taps on the shoulder. And I liken it to what I heard about in high school. It was a Churchill quote, and it's something along with the things that my mother has said about um, adapting, staying where you are until you're led, and not, getting the full experience of where you are, which means you can't be in a negative mode. You have to be in a positive mode. This is the quote that's to what my mother has said. To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they're figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing unique to them and fitting to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And it's like, that's what's happened. I realize, I mean, more now, how many taps I've received. And it wasn't because I pounded the pavement trying to figure out, oh, okay, how's my resume? Get it to the best, this foundation, get it over here. And it's always been someone saying, I think you can do it. Right from the time I was 11 years old, my mother saying, I think you can build a door on the side of the barn.
It's funny how the cultural differences are, because we have something like this in Romanian culture. It's called the train is only coming to your station once, and if you don't hop
Ooh.
in, then it's going without you. And it's basically
That's a
somehow the same.
beautiful one. That's
Yeah,
beautiful. And
yeah,
and it's much more succinct.
yeah.
But that is what has happened. And so when we were asked, you know, to direct at the Kennedy Center, from my end, I will say I led as director and producer. My wife, we did things together, but
Mm-hmm.
I was the voice, and I had we both shared responsibility, but I was in a different. My experiences were different than my wife's, but she understood how to create a storyline for the event. She understood how to take pieces and where to place them and how to use this, um, among many other talents. Mine was directing and production.
It's interesting that it's something which is going a bit against of what you were saying. Today they talk about, or at least in the motivational world, is this trend of not going with the flow. And I have somehow the feeling it's against what you're saying, because, like you said, someone came to you and said, I think you can do that. But that's a bit. Did you feel that that's a bit going with the flow, and you didn't really took the decisions? The decision were took for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was flow. It was absolutely a flow. And I mean, there's a book called Flow, and
Mm-hmm.
I had read that book many years ago. And what I realized was is to find it's almost like underneath subconsciously that sense of flow is what I'm always looking for, right? And to find it where I'm engaged in something where time has no place. It is just it's in flow. And I found that in production work. I found that the requirements for me was complete focus on whatever was in front of me
Mm-hmm.
and being clear that I would be led to what I needed to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a level of instinct with this, but I really ultimately ended up with a mastermind group of designers, light designers, set designers, projectionists, choreographers, composers, um, stage management, film, media people that were all a part of this circle to make that event happen. And in order to do that, it was not to sit there being afraid and to admit mistakes, but it's really not mistakes. It's just lessons. Learn, be open, learn, listen, you know? And
For
my
how long?
approach
For how long have you
for
done that?
from the time I was in the Navy, listen, totally. I was listening to world-class mountaineers from New Zealand giving us lessons on how they call it Z lines, how to set up lines to haul sleds up and down with someone in it. Listening to stories about other people and learning that way, learning about complex situations and how one got out of it, how they got in it, how they found themselves in it. Some of it was oversight, not being alert, and then being trained right up to when we did the Middle East trek, hiring a man that he was a private secretary to the Queen of England in the care of Prince Harry and Prince Charles. He was an SAS major, retired, so he spent 20 plus years as SAS, even that he became an SAS member of the Irish Guard, and giving us instruction on how to manage travel through Saudi Arabia by foot and car in 2006 when there's a war going on, and then going through Jordan and going through Syria and then going into Israel. And so the flow has been, and I know when I'm out of flow, and it doesn't feel good.
I mean,
It
it's
feels
easier.
like I'm wasting my time.
Correct. It's much easier if you can find the right flow to go with the flow than to build your own flow. Because
but when you say the flow, you're talking about the mass of people, maybe, of thought. I don't go with that. That's not what is my flow.
No, I don't mean. I mean with the chances, because if you have a chance that, like you said, this step on the shoulder, this is what I mean by flow.
Okay.
I think it's harder. For sure, it's harder to build it, but you feel much better when you are in the middle of it, because you saw the chance, you took it. You didn't say, no, I'm afraid I'm not able to do this. No, I want to be safe. I want to know what I'm doing. No, let's do it. What can go wrong? And that's what I mean by going with the flow. Of course,
but and a lot does, a lot,
Look, there is no perfect moment to start something. There is no perfect moment. That perfect moment was yesterday, and there is no way in which doing something really good if you don't suck at it first. This is my perspective, at least. This is how I learn stuff. I think it's better to have the 80% solution. I'm younger than you, and I'm sorry that I'm getting the conclusions out, and I should ask you the conclusion.
No.
But I think that there is no way in which you can be good at something before sucking at it. That's it. That's the only chance that you have.
It's allowed. And I really, as far as performance goes, I learned enough by the time we were doing production about how to talk with people, all people. And I mean, even talking to, African American girls that are so excited to be in Los Angeles from Washington, D.C. We're in the Beverly Hilton Hotel where they hold the Golden Globes. They're just all pumped up, and they're in a choir, and to get their attention was just unbelievable. And I finally said, ladies, one moment. Let me have your attention here. We're holding off for your director to arrive, the choir director to arrive. You need to stop commenting on everything and enjoy where you are. Focus on this rehearsal with these, 4 or 5 songs, 3, 4, 5 songs. And then you can go out into this California sunshine and you hear the girls go, oh, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'd say, okay. Of course you're excited. But right now, let's pull it in. because we've got a job to do. We're here to blow the socks off of these people, and you can do it. And then they're commenting, oh, yeah, 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 exactly. But what we need to do is really focus and hear
Focus.
yourselves, focus, and enjoy being focused because you got a whole lot of playtime after this. You're in a great place. But right now, let's do ourselves, a service. Get through this and enjoy it, but enjoy it. Just the comments. Look, you guys could be picking on each other all night long, but do it at night, not here. you know, just things like that. And being able to knowing, and listening, when little Richard's road manager, when they showed up late. It was at night. It was in Washington, D.C. Little Richard's not getting out of his limousine. Road manager, he wants to know what's going on, you know, and the road manager comes in. The guy is just absolutely exhausted. His responsibilities are so high. I said, hey, man, Mark, how you doing? Look, he knows I'm producer director, so he has an edge. He goes, look, we want this, and I'm going, okay, would you like some coffee? Would you like some sandwiches? Come here. See, we've got it set up to just chill out. Little Richard's room is all ready. It's all set. His suite is ready. Get him in there. Come back down with your crew, whoever you want, who's ever hungry, and let's sit down and just not talk. Do whatever you want to do. Take a break. We got the show tomorrow night. We're good. We're going to do it. And the guy's like, whoa, thanks, man. Yeah, we will. I like you. I like you. And
Giving
I realized
giving that peace that they needed.
and I find that everywhere, and people get pumped up, and it's not my pump. It's theirs. It's not my pump.
You just managed to find it. It's theirs, but they don't know where they put it. For sure,
Right.
that's the problem. What was after directing and producing and before the Middle East track?
Let's see. I did a television show with Miles. Miles had an idea to do it's like Shark Tank, but it's called Money Hunt. And we were on PBS. Ultimately, we were on PBS for 3 years, 3 seasons on PBS. It was a business show where you bring in an entrepreneur. Our team received business plans for people, and we were going to select individuals, 2 individuals to be on our show to present their business plan and what the amount of money they're seeking for that business. And so there were 2 guys that were the co-hosts of the show. And then we had a guest mentor on the show. The payoff was one of those teams, one of those businesses would receive 1 hour of time with the mentor. That was the guest mentor on the show. And back then, that was huge because the mentors we had Jerry Yang from Yahoo, who started Yahoo. He was on our first show. We had a guy, Kawasaki. We had Candace Carpenter. We had the guy that created Sobe Beverages. We just many different known entrepreneurs that had achieved great success.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did the show together. I was one of the directors on the show and a coach on the show. And then Miles and I took the show on the road. We took Money Hunt live to venture capital conferences. So I was doing that. The whole point of doing the show was to invest money into businesses. And on paper, we looked very, very well down the road of becoming very wealthy. And
on paper.
On paper, we had, A shares in very fine companies and on paper. And then the .com blew up. That's when I took the job as the chief operating, after that, the chief operating officer in Washington, D.C. So I left I went down to D.C. from New York area and ran the company that I had been doing with my wife events for. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I came back after 4 years, Miles and I had a chat, and my the chairman of the board of this foundation was Alma Powell, Colin Powell's,
His
who
wife.
became the secretary. Correct. And the president, I'm saying this because it's giving, you wouldn't know the lady's names, Alma, but um, the president of the organization's husband was the former Secretary of Education and the first drug czar. They made a movie about him, about what he did. Michael Douglas played in that movie. I forgot what it's called, but it's about the Colombian cartel. And
Um,
it was,
I know it. I know. I don't remember the name as well, but I know it. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
So anyway, so, and the board members of this foundation were cabinet secretaries' wives. And the treasurer of it was the man that handled the Marriott Corporation, the family's personal wealth, finances. And so I was the chief operating officer, and it was the first time where I really, the sense of flow, I was nervous, a little bit nervous about this one. But it was the president of the foundation. She insisted, the tap on the shoulder. You are I want no one else. I have interviewed, you have done all these incredible events for us in DC. They've gone off without a hitch. This has been wonderful, blah, 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 blah. You can run this foundation. Run it like you do the production company. And I'm going, sure. Yeah. And she offered me a nice salary and a nice vacation that I never took because there was never any time to take a vacation because it was 24/7. When you work in DC and you work close to people that are close to the president, there is, fires to put out. There's all kinds of things that are going on, even though you're doing this, running this organization for children. It's the people involved. So and so gets into trouble over here, and you got to do damage control or this or that. And it was a real ride. And after the first year, I thought I was dying on the vine, and I told her so. And she said, "You're not. No." And she convinced me, "You've got a house here now. You have a family." And I was going, "Oh, okay, okay, okay." So I stayed there. But when I was done after 4 years, I went back up to Vermont. We decided we were going to leave the East Coast and go to Colorado and live in Colorado. And I saw Miles, and Miles asked me, "What do you think about what's going on in the Middle East?" It was 2005. I said, "It's a mess." The president landed on the aircraft carrier and said, "Mission accomplished." But that was a year ago, over a year ago. And it's not. Now it's about weapons of mass destruction. He said, do you know anything about T.E. Lawrence? I go, "Yeah, I was going to do a one-man show on him." He goes, "What? That's what I want to do. Have you read Seven Pillars of Wisdom?" I said, "Yeah, I've read Seven Pillars and other things." And he said, "Will you be Lawrence? We can tell people, show people how we got into this Middle East mess, because it goes back to World War I. The Balfour Declaration, the Sykes-Picot, the this, the that, created this stir." And I said, I can't play Lawrence. He was 5'5.5". I'm 6'3". And this is Miles. Miles doesn't give up. "Get a bigger chair." Well, get a bigger chair. I said, "Miles, I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it." We ended up getting introduced because we wanted to do a play to a Broadway producer. Miles had the first meeting with her. I wasn't in town. And she bought it in 5 minutes 10 minutes to bring T.E. Lawrence back to life, put him on stage, and bridge an understanding of how we got into the Middle East mess based on facts. But it centers around Lawrence of Arabia. And everyone just got so excited. So we put capital together, and we realized we have to hire a playwright, our executive producer, who had done Amadeus, Nicholas Nickleby, Dracula, Elephant Man. She had won so many Tony Awards, West End and New York. She was, it was incredible. And we're still with her. We're still plugging away at this play that's now called Dinner at the Majestic. And the Majestic is the hotel where the British were assigned in 1919 at the Paris Peace Conference. And we center the play now not just on Lawrence, it's really centered on Gertrude Bell and Lawrence and Emir Faisal Hussein. Now, his brother became the king of Jordan, Abdullah, and he became the first king of Iraq. And so we're working on that play. And so what happened was, after the meeting with Nell, the executive producer, and the agreement, we were talking about it, and we said, we have to go. Yeah. We've got to go to the Middle East. For it to be authentic, we've got to go. And then we'll bring the leading guy that plays Lawrence. This is our thought, and back in 2005, we'll bring him back, put him on a camel, get him so he really understands what it's like, to be Lawrence of Arabia, and take him through Wadi Rum. But we've got to go there first. So we did. And we set it up. And just like in flow, you're led to the next step. And there was so much we didn't know of what we needed to do in order to get to the Middle East.
But why the hardcore preparation? Because initially was it always planned to go on the tracks of Lawrence, or no? It was no. Okay.
No.
Then
not a thought until after we had the Broadway producer, and we realized that we want to go. And then we told her. I mean, it was right after meeting her. I mean, she just got so excited too. Everyone was excited about it. We only told business people, and we raised money to go to the Middle East, and we identified a foundation that I'm kind of jumping ahead. We did Kayak for a Cause together. At the same time, we're getting ready for this trek in the Middle East. He pulled me in to Kayak for a Cause, which is an organization where kayakers paddle across the Long Island Sound from Norwalk, Connecticut to Calf Pasture, Long Island. And then they take transports back, which was something I was brought in because of the production. I'm production. Miles has always been ideas and money and pulling the team together. I execute the productions and with him, but I'm the lead on that. And so I started bringing in the Neville brothers, brought in Dickie Betts and the Great Southern, brought in the Whalers at different years for this event where the kayakers raise money. They form a pod of 10 paddlers. They give it a name like the Pirates or the Wenches. We ended up with 33 pods. We ended up at the highest level of 331, oh no, excuse me, it was 313 kayakers. So it was 30 pods raising money to go across the Sound and come back, have a party, have steak and lobster, listen to a band, dance on the beach, and then we would write checks from the money raised to charities. Well, we worked it up to the money that was raised and the enthusiasm around these pods, within the pods and pods against pods, who could raise the most money. We raised enough money to write 5 checks, $50,000 each, to 5
Wow.
charities. And that was the enthusiasm built around the buildup of this whole thing that started in the first year with 2 guys paddling across the Long Island Sound to see if they could. It was Miles and a great friend, and a friend of mine as well, Scott. And then people heard that they did it, and they said, we'll do it. And they said, well, maybe next year we'll do it again. I think the next year there were like 7 that paddled across. And the third year, it just grew to 313, which is a Guinness World Record of the most sea kayaks launched at one time. Back then, this would be 2009, 2010. And it's not in their book because Miles didn't pay the money to have it in the book, but he has the certificate that says that's signed and sealed, and so we still claim that position. So for our trek to the Middle East, we did the same thing. We wanted to identify a charity, raise money for us to go following T.E. Lawrence's path, and the charity we identified was Seeds of Peace. And I hope that you will include that in the show notes.
Of
Seeds
course.
of Peace, seedsofpeace.org. And we met the lady, the wife of the man who had started this. The man had passed on. John Wallach had passed on, and his wife was continuing, Janet, was continuing with the organization. And if you look it up, you'll see it's still going. It's been going since 1993. And it's an organization that brings Palestinian and Israeli thought leaders, or Arab and Jewish thought leaders, high school thought leaders, together to Maine, United States, in Maine, on a lake for the summer to take workshops on conflict resolution and how to learn to live together. And she was thrilled that we were going. She was surprised because it was dangerous. No Americans were going into Saudi Arabia in 2005, 2006. And it took 8 months of training and the unfolding of what we needed to do and be and have in our possession, knowledge and physical. We took backpacks, but what was going to be in the backpack to do a trek from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia to Damascus, Syria, following T.E. Lawrence's path. We spun off in different areas. We had to go to Petra, you know. We had to go to Jerash. There were just places we wanted to see. We rode camels through Wadi Rum, from Aqaba to Wadi Rum. I guess it was 4 days, 3 nights. 3 nights, 4 days. No, one of those. We spent time, several, days and nights going around, first getting there on camels
So
with one
you
other person.
so you had the preparation process, you have the other trainings, you studied
Yes.
Arabic as well.
Basic
plan the
stuff. Yeah.
you plan your route. Was there a moment when you thought, no, I will not do this? Was there a moment when you were close to backing up?
There was a moment when we found out that one of the hotels we were going to stay in had been bombed by terrorists. It was about 10 days before we found out. We got the news, or we heard about it, and it was, are we going to go there or not? We're going. We had been told by Jamie, our security risk assessment instructor, the one that was the private secretary. He was also a partner, private secretary to the Queen, for Prince Harry and Prince William, for their security. And we're talking about the year 2005 is when we first met up with Jamie, and 2006. And when we met him, he said that we didn't know this beforehand, but we did know that he was a partner at Ackerman International Insurance. It was where we were going to get our kidnap and ransom insurance. because we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, they said, have you been trained? Are you getting instructions? Before we could get the insurance, they were asking these things. And they said, you must have formal training. There's Blackwater, there's Centurion, there's Triple Canopy, and you might be able to get things. But we have a partner that just that has worked with some people similar to you. We didn't know who she was talking about. But when we met Jamie, he had taught Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, had given them similar instruction that he gave us before they did their long way around motorcycle trip. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you're aware of that, of them, but there's four in the series, but they were first trained by Jamie. And so in that training, he said, Saudi, kidnap and ransom, if you are kidnapped and ransomed in Saudi. And he said, I'm not talking about the government. I'm just talking about if that were to happen. The likelihood of you getting out from that is very slim. And so you must be very careful. And we went through things, what careful means in our travels. He said, Jordan, it's much more westernized. Amman, Jordan you'll like it. And you should make sure you go to this place, that place. And he suggested places because he knew the area. He didn't know Saudi as well. Syria, he said it's dicey. And so when we got the news that a hotel in this place is more westernized, had been bombed. It was a wedding party. A wedding party. Some bombs went off at a wedding party.
Crazy.
And they made their statement. It didn't destroy the building, it destroyed the wedding. So that was the going or not going. We were always going.
So there was not even a question asked about that. So you trained,
No.
you prepared, you planned, but nothing really prepared you for what's coming. I would say in the next part of our conversation, we will follow you to the track.